The Cabinet Minister, the sex worker and the row over press regulation.
Can you really successfully regulate the press after last night's revelations?
I've made a statement. I've nothing further to add.
What about
John
what Labour
Whittingdale
is saying?
has Downing Street's full backing as he fends off claims it impacted on his job regulating newspapers.
Also tonight, feeding the orphans. William witnesses the plight of the rhino. Just 3 days after yet another is killed in the Indian jungle the royals are visiting.
Running into trouble, the council planning to charge for increasingly popular park runs.
The whole spirit of getting everyone out there, embracing being fit and active, we don't want that to be threatened. It goes against the government's sports strategy and it just doesn't make any sense.
And the daddy of the Masters back with the baby who arrived early enough to let him play.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Charlene White.
Good evening. Downing Street is tonight defending a cabinet minister who's been exposed for having a relationship with a sex worker. They say John Whittingdale is single and entitled to a private life. But the story is more complicated than that. He also happens to be the minister who controls press regulation.
It's being suggested that 4 national newspapers didn't publish the story because they wanted to stop him bringing in tougher controls. That's been firmly denied by Mr Whittingdale, who insists he's done nothing wrong. But Labour's calling for his powers to be curbed, as our political correspondent Romilly Weeks reports.
He's the minister in charge of overseeing the media.
Can you really successfully regulate the press after last night's revelations?
I've made a statement. I've nothing further to add.
Who's found himself having to admit to an embarrassing story of his own. John Whittingdale wasn't saying much this morning, but last night he revealed that he'd had a 6-month relationship with a sex worker. 4 newspapers knew of the story, but it only appeared on this little-known website. Labour says the fact that the papers had potential leverage over him has compromised his position as the minister responsible for regulating the press.
To the extent that you get a perception of undue influence on a cabinet minister, then I think that's something the cabinet minister themselves would want to put right by stepping back from making the decisions that might be unduly influenced.
John Whittingdale began the relationship after meeting the woman on Match.com. 6 months later, they split after he was told by a journalist her real job was a sex worker. In May 2015, he was appointed Culture Secretary in charge of press regulation. He didn't tell the Prime Minister the press had potentially embarrassing information on him. Then last year, he indicated he wasn't ready to impose financial punishments on papers who broke the rules. Did the papers hold off publishing because he was helping their interests? This former tabloid editor says not.
If you could simply look at it as single man, not very well known MP, albeit the head of a select committee, but not very well known to the general public, dated single woman he had no idea was a prostitute. Single man, dates single woman. Where's the public interest in that?
In a statement, John Whittingdale has said he ended the relationship as soon as he discovered his girlfriend's real occupation, and that the events occurred long before I took up my present position, and it's never had any influence on the decisions I've made as Culture Secretary. For over 2 years, 4 newspapers decided not to print the story. This journalist tried to get it published in The Independent.
This was a legitimate, if you like, political story, a legitimate media story, not a story about an MP's private life, because that at no point was the objective here. It wasn't about a sleaze, it wasn't about kiss and tell. It was about, if you like, a political relationship between some newspapers and the Culture Secretary, and it was worth exposing. That's what newspapers are there for.
The Prime Minister says he has full confidence in his Culture Secretary, but the tale of the minister, the sex worker and the papers has given ammunition to critics already angry that on his watch the agreed legislation on press regulation appears to have stalled. Romilly Weeks, ITV News.
Well, our political editor, Robert Peston, is in Westminster this evening. Robert, so do you smell a conspiracy here, or is it just an embarrassing episode for a cabinet minister?
Well, there are certainly some very odd things about this case. It is striking that John Whittingdale went out with this woman, a sex worker, for 6 months before he knew what she did for a living. Most people would say that's a bit odd. Similarly, the newspapers, the 4 of them, had photographs of him with the sex worker and didn't publish a word. Again, some would say that's a bit odd. But I don't think this was a conspiracy by those newspapers to, in a sense, the allegation is to sort of blackmail him into being soft on them. I actually think they couldn't stand the story up. They had circumstantial evidence. The vendor of the story, a third party, was asking for a lot of money, £20,000. They weren't sure, actually, the story was worth that. And one thing I learned this evening was that the Labour MP Tom Watson was actually asked by one of the newspapers, the Sunday People, for his advice on whether they should publish, and he said no, that this was John Whittingdale's private life. That said, let's be clear about this. Most people would say John Whittingdale made a serious misjudgment in not telling the Prime Minister and the Cabinet Secretary that the newspapers had this information when he was given the job of Chief Regulator of Newspapers as Culture Secretary, when he was given that job last year.
All right, Robert, thank you very much.
The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have highlighted the plight of endangered rhinos by feeding babies left orphaned by poachers in India. The Prince told ITV News he was appalled by footage we obtained of a one-horned rhino slaughtered just days before his visit to Kaziranga National Park.
It's an issue close to the Prince's heart, of course. Last month, in an exclusive interview, he told me he fears the African rhino will be extinct within 10 years if action is not taken now. From Kaziranga, correspondent Geraint Vincent reports.
Taking care of animals which are in grave danger. The Duchess of Cambridge made friends today with an orphaned baby rhinoceros called Dunga. He's one of a dwindling number of one-horned Indian rhinos, and they're trying desperately here at the Kaziranga National Park to save the species. The royal couple took a tour of the rhino's natural habitat, and William was told that these are also hunting grounds for criminals who shoot the rhinos for their hugely valuable horns. Park rangers told him of the challenges they face trying to protect the animals.
The patrolling here must be quite tricky with all that long grass, especially at night. Just bump into a lot of elephants.
The rangers say they're winning their war against the poachers, but ITV News has obtained evidence to the contrary. This footage, filmed just 3 days ago, shows a rhino lying dead in the same area the Duke and Duchess visited today. Poachers shot the animal under cover of darkness, sawed off the horn while it was still alive, and made their escape before dawn.
This is a national park and a World Heritage Site, but hundreds of square miles of jungle are difficult to police, and they provide perfect ground for poachers.
A total of 30 rhinos were shot by poachers here last year. So far this year, 6 animals have been killed, largely because of a mistaken belief among people across Asia that ground-up rhino horn is a cure for all kinds of ailments, from impotence to rheumatism.
If I'm not wrong, the current rates of the rhino horns have gone as high as $300,000 a kg, especially
$100,000
yes,
per kilogram.
Yes, that is the kind of the market, demand that the rhino horn is having now.
Taking action to protect endangered species is something the Prince cares passionately about, but he's up against a powerful market which has left these magnificent animals facing extinction.
Well, tonight a spokesperson for Prince William told ITV News that his charity, United for Wildlife, is to help train and equip the rangers there. A short time ago, Geraint Vincent sent us an update from Kaziranga Park.
And this evening, the palace has confirmed to us that Prince William was made aware of the shooting of that rhino 3 days ago and that he is appalled by it. What's more, he brought up the incident specifically with the director of the park this morning. We also understand that Prince William's wildlife charity is now looking very carefully at how they might financially support and put some investment in here to better train the rangers, to recruit more of them and to give them better equipment, because without serious money being spent here, the poachers are not going to go away and the rhino population is going to remain under serious threat.
Geraint Vincent there, and if you didn't catch it, you can see my exclusive interview with Prince William and more from our series Stop the Slaughter on our website, itv.com/news.
The two official groups who'll battle for our votes in the EU referendum were named by the Electoral Commission today. Britain's Stronger in Europe and the Boris Johnson-backed Vote Leave will get public funding, TV airtime and be allowed to spend £7 million each. But a rival group claimed the decision was a stitch-up and said it was applying for a judicial review. Our political correspondent Libby Vina has more.
Meet the losers. Not of the EU referendum, of course. That's not until June the 23rd. But the team known as Go, or Grassroots Out, that lost out today in the bid to campaign to leave the European Union. Instead, the Electoral Commission decided Vote Leave, backed by 4 cabinet ministers, should have that honour. But within hours, this man, a UKIP donor and insurance tycoon, Aaron Banks, was challenging their decision. So yet more confusion on the Leave side.
Go isn't doing that.
Go isn't doing that? You think it's entirely his decision?
I can assure you there's no suggestion that Go is doing it. Grassroots Out is definitely not taking any legal action against anyone. I wish Vote Leave the best of luck.
There are big advantages for the groups chosen to lead the referendum campaigns, including a much bigger spending limit, up to £7 million, free nationwide distribution of a leaflet, and they'll be entitled to make referendum campaign broadcasts. Stronger in Europe, backed by the Prime Minister, is the group designated to lead the Remain campaign. What does its director make of any potential legal challenge?
It doesn't matter to us who gets designated. The various Leave campaigns are divided and they have yet to come clean with the British people about what our future would look like if we were to leave the European Union. By contrast, people, I think, know that we are stronger, safer and better off inside Europe than we would be on our own.
It's not clear tonight whether any legal challenge over who gets to run the Leave campaign would succeed. But what does seem self-evident is that this kind of squabbling isn't exactly the best way for those who want to quit the EU to get their message across. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
Spanish police have arrested a man who allegedly supplied weapons used by a terrorist to attack a supermarket in Paris last year.
4 people were killed in the attack on the supermarket last January. 28-year-old Antoine Deneve, a French national with Serbian connections, was arrested in Spain on Tuesday. He denies selling arms to Amadi Koulibaly, the Islamist militant who carried out the attack and was killed by police.
A man left paralysed from the neck down can now move his fingers thanks to pioneering thought-controlled technology. Ian Burkhart can grasp objects, pour drinks and even play the computer game Guitar Hero. As we first reported 2 years ago, an electronic chip implanted in his head is allowing him to move again. Our science correspondent Alok Jha reports now on the technology that could one day transform lives.
Playing the guitar, even if it's just a computer game, is nothing short of remarkable for Ian Burkhart. 6 years ago, a diving accident left him paralysed from the neck down. But now, after 15 months of training, he can use his fingers again.
Now it's just something that's so fluid, it's just kind of like it was before I had my injury, where I just think about what I want to do, and now I can do it.
3, 2, 1.
2 years ago, Burkhart was the first paralysed person in the world to be able to move his hand using just his thoughts. Now he's learnt to pinch his fingers, rotate his wrist and grasp objects, just by thinking about those actions. The technology, which bypasses the damage in his spinal cord, has been under development for more than a decade. Scientists implanted a tiny chip into Burkhart's brain to read the electrical signals. Those signals were then transmitted to a computer, which interpreted them and issued commands that would normally come from the spinal cord. Those commands operated a sleeve of electrodes on Burkhart's arm, which stimulated the muscles there to move.
This really provides hope, we believe, for many patients in the future as this technology evolves and matures, to help people who have disabilities from spinal cord injury or a traumatic brain injury or a stroke.
For those living with spinal injuries, regaining a basic use of their hands could have a huge impact.
I'd say just be cautious at the moment. Those who are paralysed already, it's not the sort of thing that they're going to be able to just take advantage of here and now. But for people who are very newly paralysed or who may become paralysed in the future, there is an element of hope.
Scientists still have a lot of work to do to make this groundbreaking technology available outside the lab. But their direction of travel is now in no doubt. Alok Jha, ITV News.
Tesco has bounced back with rising sales for the first time in 3 years, and its boss has told ITV News the business has now been stabilised. But Dave Lewis warned there's a long and rocky road ahead because of ferocious competition with discounters like Lidl and Aldi. Well, our business editor Joel Hills is here. So, Joel, is this a recovery?
Of sorts, yes, it's definitely progress. Think of what Dave Lewis inherited 18 months ago. It was a company, a complete mess. It looked in steady decline. It was losing business to its rivals. Things had got so bad to the extent that the company internally had been massaging the sales figures to make them look better than they are, something that fell foul of a serious fraud office investigation. But under Lewis, we've seen loss-making store close, debt reduce. You've seen assets sold off, debt, as I say, much cut down. The army of staff at Tesco switched onto a less generous pension scheme. And this is the important bit, prices cut in store as well, service improved. Now, in August of 2014, typical shopping basket in Tesco's, almost £47, you can see there. That's fallen, the company says, to £44.73 today. But independent research suggests that Aldi and Lidl are still 15% cheaper on average than a shop at Tesco is. Now, the boss earlier told me the gap, though, has narrowed.
We've lowered the prices in Tesco by more than 4% since I started a little over a year ago. And in categories that matter most to our customers, we have developed an exclusive range of products which allow us to be much more competitive and compete with some of the retailers you're describing.
But if Tesco shoppers were to go to Aldi or Lidl, they would save money, wouldn't they?
It depends on the basket that they shop, quite frankly, and not all customers are the same.
Look, Tesco is still Britain's biggest supermarket, and by a country mile, and it is making money again, albeit not on the scale, anything like the scale that we saw previously. Everything's changed. Tesco's cutting prices to keep up with the discounters and cutting profits at the same time. Crisis over, but the good times aren't back.
All right, Joel, thanks very much.
Now, for more than 10 years, Parkrun has welcomed runners of all ages and abilities across the country, and it's all for free, except, that is, at one park in Bristol.
Yeah, the local parish council has just voted to charge the group because it says the runners cause wear and tear to the paths. That's provoked a furious reaction, including from Olympian Joe Pavey. Rupert Evelyn reports on the running row.
Free to run, and yes, running for free. The simplest form of exercise, a popular sport. It's good for health and can be carried out almost anywhere. No one today is being charged for using Little Stoke Park, and that's not about to change. It's the hundreds of runners on a Saturday morning who pound the tarmac for free as part of the organised Parkrun event who've been told by the council they'll need to pay up or go elsewhere.
We're all pretty devastated. We have a wonderful community of runners here. We've seen that community build and strengthen, and obviously a lot of very emotional, very upset people who are worried about the future of their Saturday morning run in the park with friends.
The council don't dispute the benefits of running, but they have costs to cover, and other organised groups pay to use the site. They've even offered Parkrun a grant, which would settle the matter, but it hasn't been taken up.
We're not charging runners. They can come in here day and night and run to heart's content. What we are saying, as Parkrun is an organisation, a limited company with financial director, they should contribute like any other organisation, such as football or tennis or etc., towards the upkeep of the facilities.
With hundreds of groups globally and thousands of registered users, Parkrun has celebrity support. Many professional runners and Olympians are dismayed by the council's decision.
We want to encourage everyone to be able to take part, and the whole spirit of getting everyone out there, embracing being fit and active, we don't want that to be threatened. It goes against the government's sports strategy and it just doesn't make any sense.
Parkrun have been offered another site and their children's event is unaffected. But they and the council have dug their heels in over the adults. And the right to an organised run for free here is fast disappearing into the distance. An agreement, although possible, seems unlikely. Parkrun are likely to stick to their philosophy of keeping money out of the race. Of course, at the moment, this council is the only one in the country that is considering going down this route. But amongst a lot of, frankly, quite abusive emails the council leader has received today, he's also received some expressions of interest in what they are doing from other councils around the country. It's possible this may be the thin end of the wedge.
All right, Rupert, thank you.
Family and friends gathered today for the funeral of TV agony aunt Denise Robertson.
The 83-year-old died from cancer earlier this month. This morning, presenters Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby were amongst the mourners.
And finally, Masters golf champion Danny Willett today revealed how he spent his first triumphant night at home, changing the nappies of his newborn baby son.
Yeah, still adjusting to the limelight, the Yorkshireman posed for the cameras with his wife Nicole and son Zachariah, who's just 2 weeks old. And as Damon Green reports, after a whirlwind few days, he's now planning a well-earned break.
All the time he was playing, all the time he was competing in the American tournament, which has earned him fame and fortune, this is what Danny Willett was thinking about. A 4,000-mile journey back to South Yorkshire, a whirlwind 48 hours of photo calls and interviews, but finally together with his wife Nicole and baby Zach, his little man, he calls him, born 12 days early.
My proper trophy.
His proper trophy, even if it means now changing nappies in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I did a few last night at 2 in the morning and 5 in the morning, and then back to normal life, I guess. Some night feeds and changing, and yeah, perfect really.
Rotherham has never produced a golfer who's won the coveted green jacket of the Masters and may never produce another. But Danny Willett might never have travelled to Augusta at all if baby Zach hadn't arrived 12 days early, meaning he didn't have to choose between playing in the Masters or seeing the birth of his son.
I would never have wanted to say you're not going to the Masters ever because, well, I just wouldn't have wanted to put him in that position. But luckily, he came early and he got to win and see the birth of Zach, so it was perfect, really.
The trappings of sporting success and the $1.8 million in prize money clearly don't mean as much to this proud Yorkshireman as the family who've supported him every step of the way. He's decided to take a complete break from the golf course, something he's never done in his career before.
I watched it back last night, sat there with a beer and watched it back and just giggling to yourself. The clubs are away, it's family time now. And then in a couple of weeks when I decide to get the clubs back out, it'll be then looking forward to what we're going to try and do next. So that's kind of how it is, going to really try and properly switch off for a couple of weeks.
So if you don't see Danny Willett for a little while, don't worry, he'll be busy making up for lost time with his little man, his proper trophy. Damon Green, ITV News, in South Yorkshire.
Bless him,
nice.
right. That's all for now. Tom's here at 10.
But from all the evening news team, have a very good evening.
Bye-bye.